Good morning, everyone. Good to see each one of you. It truly is. It's great to see you. I thought since this is so close to spring, that I would tie in a little bit of springness with a short reading by Alexander Pope. Does anyone remember Alexander Pope and what he's famous for? He was a writer and a scholar and in the year 1732, 290 plus years ago, he wrote a poem, a long poem actually, called An Essay on Man. And of course, that's humankind, an essay on humankind, we would say now, but he said man back then. And one of the first things he says in that is, hope springs eternal in the human breast. I thought about that phrase. I've always heard it in kind of a joking way of hope springs eternal in the mind of a fool. But that's not actually what he said at all. He said, hope springs eternal in the human breast. Immanuel Kant, one of his people who lived at the same time he did, a very famous writer and a scholar, claimed that he thought that this was all the closest to the most perfect poem ever written, that it contained everything that was necessary for a person to become wise and live in that time. Others that were also his peers or people who came after him used this term, hope springs eternal. Many of them, including Dickens, used this phrase as well. I wanted to start and take that phrase, hope springs eternal in the human breast, and just dissect it, if you will, into some of its parts and realize how deeply packed it is by each word. I want to start, first of all, with the first word, hope. What is hope exactly? We talk about hope, we feel hope, but what is it truly? The Bible helps us figure this out. In 2 Corinthians, actually, I want to start before Second Corinthians into the idea of hope. It stated this in Hebrews. It states, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. I've often listened to this before and used it, when people would say, how do you describe faith, or what is the definition of faith? Faith, the evidence of things or the substance of things hoped for. Hoped for. So hope comes first, then faith comes later. How can that be? Why isn't it faith is there first and then hope sort of emerges from faith? I often think that this is the way that we look at things, when actually it's the opposite. Hope comes first. Well, how can hope come first, and what is hope really? To me, hope is a way of looking at life and a way of looking toward the future. So we might say, for instance, about, let's say, the war in Ukraine, which is very much on my mind a lot. What would I be hoping for in the war in Ukraine? Well, we know this. Each of us as Unity students know this. The universe does not accept or see or understand or hear a negative approach. That's why you can't say to your mind, don't see a white polar bear. It will see it. You can't say don't. That's one of the reasons that Unity exists in the positive frame of mind. So rather than saying to myself, oh, I hope this war will end soon, I say to myself, I hope peace comes again to Ukraine soon. Hoping for peace is a positive thing. The mind does not hear, I hope war will end. All it hears is, or the universe hears is, I hope war. I hope war. Well, that's not what I hope. I hope peace will break out once again. Hope that peace will be in Ukraine soon. Anything is like that. So faith, going back to the idea of faith, the evidence of things not seen. I want to break that out and say that there are different translations of the Bible that I think are a little easier to understand than that King James idea of faith being the substance of things hoped for. The substance of things hoped for might be considered what I just mentioned. If the substance of what you are hoping for is a negative term, the universe will not hear that. It will hear only the words that you described in a positive way. I hope war stops soon. No, it won't hear the stops part. It'll just hear the I hope war. So this is a different translation. This is from the Berean Bible. Anyone ever read the Berean Bible? Heck, I haven't, but this is a good translation. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the certainty of things not seen. Now I want to go over to that 2 Corinthians that I almost jumped to begin with. Paul said this about these ideas. He said, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Then later in 2 Corinthians, in the 5th chapter, he says, for we walk by faith, not by sight. I think we've all heard that before. We walk by faith, not by sight. The assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Hope. The second word, springs. Now, do we think of this as the way a large cat springs upon its prey? I don't think so. We think of it as a wellspring, just as Gloria read in the Daily Word. Joy, a wellspring of joy coming forth. Then the next word, eternal. You notice that he didn't say hope springs eternally in the human breast, because that would mean that it goes on infinitely, forever and ever. When actually what he's saying, he used the word correctly, springs eternal. It's there. It's waiting, passively waiting. Waiting for what? For the mind and the heart to connect. And that is the third word that I wanted to express. Hope, or the fourth word. Hope, we talked about. Springs, we talked about. Spring being a wellspring. Itchy nose there, sorry. Eternal. Eternal as opposed to eternally. In the human breast. He used that term, and we all know that that means the human heart. The heart is that wellspring of hope, the wellspring of joy. Why? Because it is the place, the origination, if you will, of feeling. Whereas the head, or the human intellect, is where the mind stays most of the time. Remember again, the 2 Corinthians 4:18 that I spoke of. So we fixed our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. The heart expresses the unseen. The eyes express what is seen in the outer. If we relied totally on what is seen in the outer, this would be a pretty miserable world, and it would never renew itself. It would have run down years and years ago. But it doesn't. Why? Because it's as though God or Spirit, when it gets to this point where we just don't understand how things can be the way they are using our intellect, our mind, and what we see in the outer, God or Spirit, let's just put it in kind of a simple term, just heaps another shovel full of grace upon it, heaps another one on it. And this is what gives us the chance to renew ourselves so that hope can spring eternal. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, the certainty of things not seen. For we walk by faith and not by sight. The idea of the human breast, the human heart, being this center and this wellspring of hope, springing eternal, is absolutely a wonderful thing if you think about it, and very, very unity. In unity, we believe this: thoughts linked to feelings, can't see my heart here, thoughts and feelings come together into a perfect divine spiritual marriage, and their production is thoughts plus feelings equal manifestation. So if we link the way we feel and know that that is truth deep down inside ourselves, and link that with what our mind is thinking, we can produce the manifestation that we want in the world, that we desire in the world. Going back to the idea that hope, this idea of thought and mind and feeling and heart all coming together will and can and will produce in our world that which we truly desire. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it we truly desire in the world? What do we desire? More of the same, more of what our eyes and ears tell us? Or do we want more of what our heart knows and is longing for? Longing for a newer, fresher, better way, the wellspring of hope and the wellspring of joy coming together. So what do you want in your own life? Do you want this goodness to come to you? Do you want it to spring forth eternal? Or do you want to just believe what you see in the outer and just say, to heck with it, I give up? No, I don't think so. I think each one of us desires more, better, softer, kinder, all the aspects of true love, true goodness, and true fortune. Take that with you during this week and remember that hope does spring eternal in your heart. Allow it to come forth. God bless. Mwah.